Good morning once again. It's 5 minutes past 9, and we'll be taking off. Thank you so much for joining us today, and welcome to today's informative session on harmonizing and centralizing NIN and BVN validation. We recognize today the presence of our highly esteemed partners from banks, commercial banks, and other financial institutions. We recognize the presence of chief information officers of banks and other financial institutions, group heads of operations, chief compliance officers, chief audit executives, chief information security officers, product managers, and other very highly appreciated and respected partners in commercial banks and other financial institutions. Welcome to today's session. Today's session promises to be very, very insightful and enriching. The service that we're going to present to you is one of those services that completely transforms and improves the way we conduct our business. It empowers us to deal with everyday challenges that we face with knowing your customer and knowing your customer's business. My name is Akubo Silva Izemoka, and I'm your host for today. At our end, we have the presence of our Managing Director, Mr. Premier Oyiwo. Also from NIBS, I'll be supported by co-anchors. And my colleagues who are supporting me are Bola Eniboko, our Head of Enterprise Jet Service, Aki Ogushola, our Chief Technology Officer, Frederick Kyo, our Senior Product Specialist, among other colleagues. We'll be starting right off. What I'll promise you today is that we'll respect your time. We'll make sure that your time here is well spent, and we'll make sure that we conclude on time. So we'll be taking off right immediately. To start off, I'll be calling on the presence of I'll be calling on our Managing Director, Mr. Premier Oyiwo, to share with us some opening remarks. Premier, please.
Good morning, dear colleagues and partners from the industry. I want to thank all of you for joining this section. At least it's about 9:09 a.m. And like AK has said, we are going to respect your time, and I'm glad that most of you came in early, and we'll also make sure we address all the issues as promptly as quickly. This section today, which will be anchored by my colleagues, is basically to address some of the industry-related issues which aim at meeting the CBN directive, especially as it relates to KYC and further protecting the ecosystem. As you are all aware, NIBS was set up by the founders of NIBS for and on behalf of the financial industry as a shared platform and to continuously lower costs of doing business. Based on this mandate, we have engaged NIMSI, a partner, with respect to the harmonization of the BVN and the NIN. I'm happy to announce that we've achieved a direct integration for and on behalf of the financial institution, which we pass through NIBS, straight to NIMSI. Having also achieved that, another value proposition with respect to this action or point we are presenting here today is that the cost will be significantly cheaper because we are going for a bouquet pricing for the entire industry, which has been negotiated to continuously drive home our point of having a shared platform. I just want to say welcome, and then to let you know that this is a very relevant and required application based on the central bank circular and directive. And further details will be announced by my colleagues in their presentation. I will be here to take questions. Thank you so much. Today is Friday. We're going to try and move fast, take questions, and then bring this to closure. So this is the first of series of activities that will follow the launch of this BVN and NIN harmonization. Thank you very much, everyone, and welcome.
Thank you very much, Premier. We will get right into the presentation. The presentation will be taken by my colleagues, Bola Eniboko and Aki Ogushola. Bola, please.
Okay, all right. Thank you very much, Akubo. Thank you, Premier, for the opening remarks. Good morning, everyone, our distinguished colleagues from the industry. Today, it's a very exciting day for all of us because we are really doing something that is very important for the industry. Aki, you can move on to slide 3. Essentially, the CBN has done a lot of effort, really, to promote financial system stability. And part of that is their effort in strengthening the KYC for the industry. On December 1, 2023, CBN released a circular focused on the use of NIN as well as the BVN in the industry. And the section 1.5.3 of the regulatory framework of the BVN was also amended to be able to incorporate some key activities that the industry will need to comply with when it comes to the use of BVN and NIN as well. And there were 4 critical things that the CBN considered in this circular. The first is that it is mandatory for all Tier 1 bank accounts and wallets for individuals to have BVN and or NIN. Secondly, it remains mandatory for Tiers 2 and 3 accounts and wallets for individual accounts to have BVN and NIN. Also, in that circular, the CBN mandated that the process for account opening will commence by electronically retrieving BVN or NIN information from the respective databases at NIPS or at NIMSI. He also recommended that all existing accounts or wallets for individuals with validated BVN shall be profiled on the NIMSI card immediately within 24 hours of opening. So essentially what we are doing today is to come up with a solution that will enable the industry comply with this circular that the CBN released on December 1, 2023. Secondly, like Premier said, the NIMSI-NIPS relationship or partnership has really grown, and is also delivering a lot of enormous benefits. And who are the key beneficiaries of this relationship? All of us in the industry, in the sense that we create a process where data from both institutions can be harmonized and creates a lot of easy access for you stakeholders in getting information around the NIN or the BVN. From the financial inclusion perspective, there are a number of Nigerians now who have NIN, over 100 million, and almost 70 million Nigerians with BVN. So we think that this is a very good opportunity to grow financial inclusion. The CBN also mentioned that some financial inclusion has increased from 68% to 74% as of December. However, the drive is to see how we can grow this to as much as 90%. And what we are bringing forward to you this morning is a solution that will help us drive this very key activity. Premier has talked about the cost optimization. What we are giving to you is far cheaper than any other alternative. There's a lot of cost advantage. And from the process efficiency perspective, you do not need to log into various silos of databases. We are going to present to you this morning an interface where you can get everything from one place and make the process of the TAT, a lot more efficient. And finally, I would like to mention that whatever it is that we are doing today comes with a lot of protection from the data perspective and also from the privacy perspective as well. So we are building a lot of data protection solutions, especially around the consent management, into ensuring that all the stakeholders here, including the customers, are well protected. So thank you very much once again. At this point, I would like to hand over to my colleague, Akin, who will take us through the rest of the presentation. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Bola, and good morning again to everyone. So moving very quickly, we're talking about the BVN and the NIN, right? And of course, the value here is a centralized access, simplified access, lowered operational costs, improved customer experience. But from this point forward, I'll focus more on the service, or better yet, the delivery mechanism for this. And at the end of this, we have a short demonstration, which is fairly technical. I'll explain more when I get to that slide. So today, when we think about it in the industry, there's a number of accepted forms of identity, right? And it's crucial that these identity or these forms of identity are validated, and that could be the national identity, the BVN, but also we know in some cases passports are accepted, driver's license, and if you're a corporate, things like RC numbers and so on and so forth, right? So when we're thinking about this, the current identity landscape is one such that when an individual or a corporate shows up as a financial institution, that institution has to validate these documents. And typically that means integrating or having relationships with various sources of data. Now, if a new ID comes up in the future, it means a new integration, a new endpoint. And of course, it means the resources that it's required to manage these endpoints, to keep up with the evolution of these endpoints, and so on and so forth. And we all know how much more difficult it is today in terms of retaining these technical resources and where we'd rather put them to work. So generally speaking, we've summarized this by saying, look, there's multiple integrations with different providers. There's a cost of maintaining these different connections, and there's various API specifications that just lead to all kinds of overhead complexities. And so at NIBS, we rethought of this whole thing and we said, you know what, let's build a service. Let's build a service where it's a single integration for the industry, right? Such that from that service, various forms of validations can occur. Of course, this means, at the NIBS end of things, we have to go build in the relationships. We have to go negotiate those volume discounts, which I believe my colleagues have spoken to. But it also means that we provide you a service that is also scalable and highly efficient. And I'll talk more about these as we go on. So where does this take us? If a new institution shows up or if a new identity shows up, there is no new integration. It's a one-time integration into this service that offers the benefits we've been speaking of, which is a single integration, lower cost, and improved customer experience. But we've gone a bit beyond that. We've also thought to ourselves, it is a one-time integration, which means, can we define this in a way where we are not constantly integrating into this particular system? Let's define a message that allows us to scale into the future and into various forms of information. Can we also ensure that we deliver improved success rates, right? And these are two things I'll be speaking of a bit more in the next slide. And just to put things in context, where we are starting is obviously with the NIMC and the NIBS collaboration, but it's not by any means where we're ending, right? We intend to keep delivering value and growing this platform to bring it as truly a centralized validation system for the industry. So speaking a bit more about that, what we've really built under the hood is an intelligence switch. And I'm going to talk briefly on 4 key points that I think are useful for the audience. The first is that we're able to fetch from the sources and their read replicas. And what I mean by this is, if we are going, let's say, for example, for the NIN, we're able to go to the primary, we're able to go to the DR, we're able to go to a third site, all within the control of NIMC, which basically increases the success rates for each of the requests that are made. And this can be done intelligently on the back end. It can be based on, if there was a failure response from site 1, we can go try site 2. If there's high latency site 1, automatically we'll do site 2, site 3, right? So it's not just a one-to-one connection. We're actually very keen on improving the success rates that come through this switch. The second is that it's response and latency aware. I think I've just described that, where if I get a failure on the first site, I can actually try the second site, and the failure can be for whatever reason, right? If I'm seeing higher latencies to one site, I can use the other sites, right? And all about delivering the best possible experience for the institution that is requesting. And these responses are in milliseconds. So you mean, for the user who don't know, we've checked 3 or 4 sites to deliver the value that you're requesting. Also, and you'll see this shortly, the same endpoint can be used for KYC or Boolean responses, Boolean being true or false. So it's, you want to check the entire data and open a form. Sometimes you want to make sure match, and the exact same request can be used, the same endpoints can be used for that. Finally, within every response message, we are embedding what we call the proof of consent, meaning whatever ID or token was used to actually get consent will be also returned per request, so that you know that whatever you're getting, whatever data you're getting through this platform comes with the consent of the user, right? Now, moving to the front end of things, and just a quick description here. When the request is being made, it's a very simple design, and we're going for a very simple design. And, you simply just send the number and the type. So today you send a number and you say it's NIN, and we know where to route that. You send a number, it's BVN, and so on and so forth into the future. But you can also send, and sometimes, let's say for a VNIN, you need to send both the signature and the number, right? So we make provisions for that, right? Biometric, sometimes it's just the fingerprint that you're sending that to be routed appropriately. But in addition to this, and we put it in blue because we call this the add-on messages. Now you can think of these black, the core fields, as KYC fields, right? in the add-on fields, whenever there's an add-on, whenever any of these fields is populated, it tells us this is a Boolean, this is a true false. It says, for whatever it is I'm sending you, this additional information, let me know if it's true or false. Let me know if there's a match, right? And of course, this is a somewhat simplified version, but it illustrates the purpose where it's a one-time integration to a centralized validation service that can be used and grown across various sources with the intelligence at the back end, but also the flexibility in front where you can do both your Boolean searches, your KYC searches, and so on and so forth. Now, what I'd like to do here is go to a practical demonstration. I'm going to have my colleague share his screen, and while he's doing that, I will first give a bit of a disclaimer. So those who've not seen API interfaces, specifically Postman, this is going to look somewhat weird. It's going to be highly technical. There's no portal, it's not pretty. But what we intend to demonstrate is using the same endpoint, the same request message. In our certification environment, I can send a BVN and get a BVN response, or I can send a NIN and get a NIN response. I can also do the same for a VNIN, although the response in that case is not very pretty to look at, so we'll keep it to the BVN. Okay. Now, what we've decided to do is we recognize that, of course, in this demo, actually yesterday when we were thinking through this, we said, let us show the full thing. Let us show the retrieval of a NIN. Let us ask the audience to give us a NIN and let's go fetch your information. And then we said, no, that is a security, that's a major problem, right? So instead, we went fairly quickly through what we've demonstrated. But as you can see from our last slide, please, if you're interested in a private demo, where we can actually show you, and in that room with your consent, we can actually get your information in these same APIs, please just scan this QR code. It's basically just a schedule to say, look, I'm interested, here's my institution. We agree a date and time. In a smaller session, we can demonstrate it end to end and do a deep dive. But fundamentally, we believe we'll at least be able to show, for those who understand the APIs, it's one endpoint. You choose BVN, you get a response from BVN. Choose NIN, you get from in, and it's something that we can grow to other sources of information and provide this centralized validation service for the industry. Thank you very much. Yes, I'll go over to you.
Thank you very much, Aki. That was insightful. I did see the disclaimer saying it was highly technical, but as a non-technical person, I would say that I found it very informative. For me, there were a few key takeaways. One was a single entry point. So you have an application, and I'll give an example of an account opening application. You don't have to have multiple integrations to use any form of identifier, whether it's the BVN, whether it's the NIN or the VNIN. From a single entry point, one single integration, you're able to validate all these identities. The second takeaway I had from that was that it's not even limited to the BVN or the NIN, but it's expandable. So so it means that that's single. So that's the key message here. Single entry points, multiple identity validation. Thank you very much, Aki. I'm hoping that at this time, we are having our audience scan the QR codes. We're happy to reach out to you to hold personalized session. So even beyond the personalized sessions, we're going to be having smaller groups where we are focusing on particular segments per time. But today's session is largely an informative session. We wanted to announce to the industry that this service is available for your use. We'll be having further smaller sessions with different groups following this. The floor is now open. And on the agenda now, we have questions and answers. The floor is now open for question and answers. And indeed, in the comments in the chats, I can see several questions. So I'll be reading out the questions. Please drop your questions in the chats. I'll be reading out the questions in the chat while my colleagues will be taking them. The first question I can see is, can BVN, and this question is from, and what would help us for further engagements, please, is also to drop the institution that you are in so that we can reach you to discuss further, right? So this first question is from Emeka Onwufo, and he says, can BVN and NIN data be matched? Can BVN and NIN data be matched? Emeka, I think I would like you to provide a bit more clarity on that question. Can BVN and NIN data be matched? Okay. Somebody says cost implication. I would answer that very simply. My MD did mention in his opening remarks is that our mandate is to lower operating costs for the industry. That's what NIBS does. So you can expect that it's going to come to you at a price point that is much lower than any price points that you're dealing with today. Someone says, would the slides be shared? Definitely the slides will be shared. Another question, and I think this is for Aki, it says, do we need to build the UI by ourselves? Or would you give us a complete solution? Are we just subscribing to the API or to the whole package? Aki, please.
That's it. That's a very good question. I think maybe the way to answer that for us is our first, maybe in phases. I'll answer in phases. Our first port of call is always to think like we are a platform to enable the industry. So we typically start with the APIs, of which, let's say, existing services for onboarding or existing service for account opening can call this API and integrate into what already exists. Now, when you say build an end-to-end solution, it would depend on which use case we're targeting, right? Is it account opening for an institution? Is it something else? So maybe a bit more information on that, but I think the general answer is typically we always start with APIs so that the functionality is there for the industry to consume. And then, of course, based on engagement like this, if we need to then target more specifically a portal or some end-to-end, that is something that can be considered. I hope I've answered the question.
I think so, you have. Someone says, and this question is from Prince Aya, can the parents' information of minors who require accounts be fetched? Can the parents' information of minors who require accounts be fetched? I think this also ties down to the data that is tied to the BVN or the NIN that is being inquired of. So in response to that, the response to that is you're querying with a BVN or you're querying with an NIN. The information tied to these identities can be provided. Mohammed from...
Okay.
Sorry, just to jump in on that. Oh, okay, Bola, did you want to take that?
Do you want to say something? Go ahead, please.
Yeah.
Please go ahead, Aki. I'll contribute when you're done.
For me, it's a function of consent, right? So when you say, can the parents' information of minors or whoever, I mean, the point we're making is, and I agree, you were spot on. Any information provided as consent can be fetched, right? So if the parent gives their consent for that purpose, and just so we're very clear, in the request for consent, the purpose is also being communicated to the individual providing it. So as long as you have consent and the parent says, yes, you can have this information, for my minor, I'm the parent of this minor and so on and so forth, then the answer is yes. All right. Bola, please go ahead.
Okay, all right. Thank you very much, Akin. So I was going to respond to some of the questions that are coming up on the chat. Somebody asked, sorry, in no particular order, somebody asked, what is the cost of private demonstration? There is no cost to any private demonstration, please. Just indicate in the form and then we will engage you. That I think somebody asked earlier if the NIN and the BVN data can be matched. Of course, we expected, even in line regulation, to make sure that this information that is being provided, is properly matched, and also ensure that it is correct compared with what the customer has provided at the point of account opening. Somebody talked about what would be the overall cost, like what the MD and I also said earlier, that it's going to be a lot cheaper than what you have today. But remember that before we announce cost, we are also in talks with CBN to ensure that whatever it is that we are announcing as cost is very much in line with regulation. But the assurance is that it's going to be a lot cheaper than what you have. Is the cheapest anyway that you're going to find in industry today. Somebody asked if there is a sandburst you can test it. Yes, there is. And I think my colleague Hakim mentioned earlier that once you indicate by scanning this QR code that you can see on your screen, we'll engage you, and then quickly we can begin to do all the tests that you would want from your side. Somebody asked earlier if you can search for NIN and BVN. Yes, the interface that we have provided will enable you to search for both information. So as you input the requested information, if it's NIN, it is routed, on the interface to the appropriate database. if it's BVN, it is also routed, accordingly. Then somebody asks from FCMB, will this validation be added to the existing BVN validation portal? So what we have done here is to put everything in one place for ease of access. I think my colleague Akin mentioned that earlier. So the advantage here is that rather than logging into multiple interfaces, from one single integration, you are able to access all this information. And of course, it brings a lot of efficiency to the turnaround time as well as to the process itself, the overall process itself. I'm so sorry, there are so many, so I'm just going through them one by one. I don't know at this point if my other colleagues want to take some other questions and that are still coming up. And I'll be chipping more as time goes on. Thank you.
Bola, there's a question that says, can NIN and BVN be requested at the same time, like impute both? Aki, do you want to speak to that?
Yes, that's an interesting question. Actually, one that we were debating yesterday. As of this time, so I'll speak to the way we're designing the front. We said you should select a type, and there's only one field to say the type, right? So you'd say the number, this is a type. So that would suggest no, you'd say the one that you want. However, again, it was a debate yesterday. What if we send two at the same time? And what we're still trying to identify are the use cases for that. So whoever asked that question, actually, I think maybe a contribution to our debate internally, please reach out to us, or maybe to your RM. If there's a use case we're not thinking about that requires both in parallel, please let us know. But right now, we're thinking about it as a validation request, and it's one after the other.
So at this point, I would like to stop and then call on the Femi Sojere, who will be making the closing remark. Akugo, where are you? Me hand over to you.
Thank you very much, Premier. Femi, please.
Okay, so once again, I would like to close by thanking everyone who have joined this call, my colleagues, all the stakeholders. I think we will continue to iterate that NIBS is here to ensure that we build quality, viable, valuable products that support the industry. Our major objective is to ensure that continue to enable at low cost. And please, NIBS, like you all know, is owned by all of you, especially for the money banks. And we need to grow our products together. One of the reasons that we continue to present this our products at the industry level before we introduce it to the stakeholders is because we want contributions to how we can improve our services. We've had a lot of interesting questions, interesting suggestions, and we would go back and ensure that we use your comments to improve our service. Please don't let it stop here. You have all our emails, contact numbers. If you have any ideas on how we can improve on this service, make it more usable, make it more friendly, we're always welcome to take your contribution. So thank you once more and have a wonderful day.